Three university students are discussing the advantages and disadvantages of traditional textbooks and digital study materials. They share their personal experiences and compare both options in terms of concentration, convenience, cost, and learning effectiveness.
I personally prefer physical textbooks. Last week, I spent several hours reading articles on my laptop for a sociology assignment, and my eyes became really tired. With a physical book, I can highlight important points, write notes in the margins, and easily remember where I found specific information. I also find it much easier to concentrate because there are no notifications or other websites tempting me to stop studying. For me, reading from paper feels more focused and comfortable.
I understand that, but I prefer digital materials because they're much more convenient. I keep almost all my university readings on my tablet, so I don't have to carry several heavy textbooks around campus. The search feature is especially useful because I can find a particular word or topic within seconds instead of going through dozens of pages. Digital textbooks can also be cheaper, and many universities provide free access to academic articles and ebooks through their online libraries.
Both options have advantages, but I still learn better from physical books. When I read something on a screen, I sometimes feel that I understand it without actually remembering much later. Holding a book and turning the pages helps me concentrate and stay connected with the material. There's also a practical advantage because physical books don't depend on batteries, internet connections, or technical devices. Once my tablet stopped working before an important class, and I couldn't access any of my readings.
Exactly. Another reason I prefer printed materials is that they reduce my screen time. We already spend hours looking at computers during lectures, assignments, and online research. Reading from paper gives my eyes a break and helps me avoid distractions.
That's true, but digital resources are still more practical for me. I can carry materials for several subjects on a single device, which saves both space and weight. I can also back up my notes and highlights online, so I'm less likely to lose important information.
I agree that digital materials are convenient, but they can also create distractions. Whenever I'm studying online, I sometimes end up checking messages or social media instead of reading.
Maybe the best solution is to use both formats depending on the situation. We could use digital materials when we need quick access, search tools, or large amounts of information, and choose physical books when we need deeper concentration and detailed study.
I think that's a reasonable compromise. I'd still choose digital resources for most of my work because they're lighter, faster, and easier to organize, but I understand that everyone has different learning preferences.
I agree with that approach. Technology has made studying much more convenient, but physical books still have important benefits. A combination of both would allow students to choose the method that works best for each subject and learning situation.
Three university students are discussing the advantages and disadvantages of having part-time jobs on campus. They share different experiences about managing work with studies, earning money, developing useful skills, and avoiding excessive stress.
Honestly, I don't think having a part-time job on campus is worth it for everyone. I worked at the library last month, and after spending hours helping students and organizing books, I had very little energy left for my coursework. I even found myself feeling sleepy during morning lectures. University studies already require a lot of concentration, so adding work responsibilities can make it difficult to maintain good academic performance. I'd rather spend that extra time studying or working on activities that directly support my future career.
I understand that, but my experience has been quite different. I work part-time in the academic office, and it has actually helped me become much better at managing my time. Before getting the job, I used to waste a lot of time during the afternoon and often postpone my assignments. Now I plan my work shifts and study hours in advance, so I'm more organized. Another advantage is that I earn my own spending money, which gives me a sense of independence and reduces how often I need to ask my parents for financial support.
I think both of you have valid points, but the workload can become overwhelming. I worked at the campus cafe last semester, and some days my shift ended around 8 p.m. I still had assignments and lab reports to complete afterward, so I often stayed up very late. Eventually, I became extremely stressed and had to quit after a month. The problem wasn't only the number of hours, it was also the mental exhaustion that came from trying to manage work and university responsibilities at the same time.
I really like that idea. I'd also prefer if universities offered more work-study positions connected to students' majors, such as helping professors with research, assisting in laboratories, or supporting academic projects. Students could earn money while gaining experience directly related to their career goals. That seems much more valuable than spending all their free time doing routine tasks.
I agree that relevant jobs would be ideal, but I still think even a basic campus job can teach discipline and responsibility. Sometimes students need to start with simple opportunities before they can move into better positions. The important thing is to choose a reasonable number of working hours and make sure the job doesn't interfere with studies.
Yes, I think balance is the key. Part-time jobs can provide money, independence, and valuable skills, but students shouldn't sacrifice their academic performance or well-being for them. If universities offer flexible, limited-hour jobs and students choose positions that fit their schedules, working on campus can be a useful part of university life without becoming a source of burnout.
Three university students are discussing the value of final examinations. They share different opinions about whether final exams are an effective way to measure learning or whether students should be assessed through projects and continuous assignments.
Honestly, I think final exams are becoming outdated. Last semester, I had 3 exams on the same day, and I was so stressed that I focused more on memorizing information than actually understanding it. During one psychology exam, I even forgot some answers even though I had studied the material carefully. I don't think one stressful exam can accurately represent everything a student has learned throughout an entire semester.
I completely agree. Final exams often encourage students to cram information just before the test and then forget most of it afterward. I think projects, presentations, and research papers are much more useful because they allow students to apply what they have learned. These activities also develop creativity, communication, teamwork, and critical thinking.
I understand your concerns, but I still think final exams have an important purpose. They encourage students to review the entire course instead of focusing only on individual assignments. Without a final exam, some students might never go back and connect everything they learned during the semester. I also like the sense of achievement that comes from preparing for a final and successfully completing it.
That's true, but I still believe continuous assessment is a better way to measure genuine learning. Weekly assignments, quizzes, and classroom discussions allow professors to see how students are progressing instead of judging them on one particular day.
Exactly. Students have different learning styles and abilities. Some people are excellent at taking exams, while others can demonstrate their knowledge much better through writing, presentations, or practical projects. A project gives students more opportunity to think creatively and explain their ideas.
I agree that different assessment methods have advantages, but completely removing final exams could create problems. Exams are relatively efficient and provide a common way to evaluate students across different classes.
Maybe the best solution is to reduce the importance of final exams rather than remove them completely. Universities could use regular assignments, projects, and smaller tests throughout the semester, followed by a shorter final exam.
I really like that approach. A combination of different assessment methods would give students more than one opportunity to demonstrate what they know. It would also make the evaluation system fairer for students with different strengths.
Yes, I think that's a reasonable compromise. Final exams can still be useful for reviewing the complete course, but they shouldn't determine a student's entire grade. Combining them with continuous assessments and practical projects would create a more balanced system that measures both knowledge and real-world skills.
Three university students are discussing the advantages and disadvantages of using AI tools for academic assignments. They share different opinions about academic integrity, independent thinking, accessibility, and the responsible use of technology in education.
Honestly, I have some serious concerns about using AI for academic assignments. I recently read a paper that seemed completely AI-generated. It was well written, but it didn't really contain any original ideas. I think the main purpose of education is to develop our own ability to think, analyze, and solve problems.
I completely agree. Academic honesty is another major concern. If students submit AI-generated work as their own, it becomes difficult for teachers to know what they actually understand. My professor recently said that students could face serious consequences if they use AI inappropriately.
I understand your concerns, but I don't think AI should be completely rejected. I've personally found it useful when I'm struggling to organize my ideas or don't know how to begin an assignment. For example, I can use AI to create a basic outline and then develop the content myself.
That's where I still have some doubts. If we constantly depend on AI to organize our thoughts, we may never properly develop those skills ourselves. I've noticed that when I rely too much on technology, I sometimes find it harder to analyze complicated topics independently.
Exactly. There's also the impact on classroom discussions. If everyone uses AI to prepare perfectly written answers, conversations may become less natural. Sometimes making mistakes or expressing an incomplete idea leads to a really interesting discussion.
I agree that students shouldn't become dependent on AI, but there are also important accessibility benefits. Some students struggle with academic writing, language barriers, or organizing their thoughts. For them, AI can provide useful support that allows them to communicate their ideas more clearly. It can help students understand difficult instructions, improve grammar, or organize information without doing the entire assignment for them.
I can understand that perspective. Maybe the real problem isn't AI itself but how students use it. If students use it to generate their entire assignments, that's clearly harmful to learning. But using it for limited support, while doing the research and thinking independently, could be different.
I agree. Students need to learn how to use AI responsibly instead of simply being told to avoid it. Teachers could explain which uses are acceptable, such as brainstorming, proofreading, or understanding difficult concepts, and which uses cross the line into academic dishonesty.
Exactly. I think we've reached a reasonable middle ground. AI can be a valuable academic tool when it supports learning rather than replacing it. Students should remain responsible for their ideas, research, and final work, while using AI only where it is allowed and genuinely helpful. The goal should be to combine technology with independent thinking so that AI improves education without taking away the learning process.
Three university students are discussing the advantages and disadvantages of mandatory group projects. They share different experiences about teamwork, unequal contributions, academic pressure, and whether students should have the freedom to choose between individual and group assignments.
I honestly don't like mandatory group projects. Last semester, I had a terrible experience because I ended up doing most of the work while two of my teammates barely participated. I had to stay up late just to complete our presentation before the deadline. It felt extremely unfair because my grade depended on people who weren't contributing equally. I think students should be evaluated mainly on their own effort rather than being responsible for the performance of an entire group.
I completely understand. I'm usually quite organized, but coordinating 4 different students can become really difficult. Everyone has different classes, part-time jobs, and personal schedules, so finding a suitable time for meetings is often a problem. Sometimes people don't respond to messages until the last minute, and then we have to rush to finish everything. I would much rather work independently because I know exactly what needs to be done and can manage my own time without depending on other people.
I see why you both feel that way, but I actually think group projects have important benefits. They may be difficult sometimes, but teamwork is a major part of professional life. Through group assignments, students learn how to communicate, divide responsibilities, solve disagreements, and work toward a common goal. I've also learned a lot from listening to different classmates because they often have ideas that I wouldn't have considered on my own. These experiences are difficult to get from individual assignments.
I agree that teamwork is useful, but the problem is that group projects don't always create real teamwork. Sometimes one or two students do almost everything while the others simply receive the same grade. Professors often grade the final presentation without knowing exactly who contributed what. I don't think it's fair for a hard-working student to receive the same grade as someone who barely participated. It can also create a lot of frustration and tension between classmates.
Exactly. I'd rather be responsible for my own results. If I make a mistake in an individual assignment, at least I know that it's my responsibility. In group projects, another person's lack of effort can directly affect my grade. It can also create arguments and resentment between students, which isn't good for classroom relationships. I think students should be encouraged to cooperate, but they shouldn't necessarily be forced to depend on one another for their academic grades.
I understand that concern, but difficult teamwork can also teach important leadership skills. In one project last semester, a teammate wasn't completing their part, so I had to speak up and help redistribute the tasks. It was stressful at the time, but I learned how to communicate clearly and solve problems instead of simply giving up. Some of my closest university friendships also started while working on group assignments. So, although group projects can be messy, they can create valuable experiences.
I still believe group projects offer valuable lessons, but I understand that they don't work equally well for everyone. If professors provide clear responsibilities, monitor individual contributions, and give students some flexibility, group assignments could become much more effective. Working together can be challenging, but when everyone contributes equally, creating something as a team can be a really rewarding experience.